So today we are reviewing Royce Gracie's Jiu-Jitsu books. Hi guys, my name is Joe, and my channel is Fighting Words, the Martial Arts Library. And on this channel, I review martial arts books and talk about other martial arts related subjects. Today you're getting a twofer. You're getting the Ultimate Fighting Techniques, Volumes 1 and 2 by Royce Gracie and Kid Peligro. Now, Royce Gracie is, I would say, perhaps the second most famous martial artist in history behind Bruce Lee. He is pretty famous for his tournament wins in the early, Ultimate Fighting Championships in the early UFC days, back when it was a very limited rules format. You know, no gloves, no weight classes, no time limits. And Kid Peligro has co-authored a lot of jiu-jitsu books. You know, he's a black belt in jiu-jitsu, but he's pretty much here as the writer. Anyway, like I said, I'm reviewing both books at the same time. Volume 1 is called The Top Game, and Volume 2 is called Fighting from the Bottom. Volume 1 was published in 2005, Volume 2 was published in 2007. Now, the intro to Volume 1 includes your training objectives and your positional hierarchy, and that's illustrated both from a top perspective and a bottom perspective. And the positional hierarchy of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu was one of the things that set it apart originally from other grappling styles, where, you know, it went in with a strategy of not just be on top, stay on top, you're winning, but okay, if you happen to be in this top position, it's better than that top position. So it's good that the intro covers that first. The next parts are on closing the distance and clinching, including some clinch drills. Now, this section includes things like striking. You know, we get the famous, Gracie stomp into a clinch. We get some takedowns, some throws, some counters, as well as some follow-ups. And this is something I don't think you're going to find too much today in, modern Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu manuals. So this is a bit of a throwback, but if you are, I think it has application both for self-defense, if grappling is your chosen self-defense medium, as well as some ideas that can be used in no holds barred, or mixed martial arts. Once the fight goes to the ground, there's stuff on guard passing, and that includes no holds barred strikes, including headbutts, and briefly includes a few half guard passes. And it should be noted that all of those passes do wind up, or most of them, or all of them, wind up in a submission. So, once we get past here, we're going for this choke, right? After that, we get a chapter, we get sections on attacking from side control and attacking the turtle position. The section on side control includes a lot of transitions, like transition into mount, for instance. We get submissions in the form of, chokes and specifically arm locks. And then we get a very brief knee on belly section that also goes over a few submission options from there. Now, there's multiple chapters on the mount. The first one is on defending counters to mount, so how to prevent the guy from escaping mount. I do appreciate that there is an entire chapter dedicated to that. And then, of course, we have the section on subs. And sort of dovetailing off of that, there's a chapter on how to finish the armbar, when the opponent starts to defend against it. And then a chapter on the side mount, or section on the side mount, which is what we would call the vale tudo mount, or the gift wrap position. So it is not side control. You have the opponent turned on one side. You're sort of in a almost kneeling across his body, but also sort of behind him. Put up an illustration, it'll be easier. And The first book ends with a section on back attacks, and that is pretty much comes down to, you know, how to fight off the counters when you're going for a choke. Now, the second book, the intro of that one, talks about the mentality you should have when you are stuck in a bad position, because the whole thing's on the bottom game. And a lot of the bottom game of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is getting from a bad position to a better position. We start with defenses versus back control, mount, and side control. Almost all of those are getting to guard. Like, that's the goal of what's being demonstrated there. You know, there are some reversals. There's a little bit in the way of submission defense, and there are some opportunistic submissions, you know, primarily in the way of leg locks. It's also notable, again, because this is like old school Gracie Jiu-Jitsu being presented, he's also showing some defenses against strikes in these sections. We do get a brief half guard chapter that's pretty much get to guard or sweep. The guard chapter or section is the longest of any of the volumes here, and that really shouldn't be a surprise. It's sort of a signature of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and, frankly, of Royce Gracie himself. This section includes several submissions, including submission chains from the full guard position. It also includes sweeps from butterfly, and how to counter different passes. Those are standing passes, low passes, and kneeling passes. And we also actually get several drills on defending against passes. So those are two books that I kind of rushed through. I would say other highlights of this, it is extremely detailed. They have color pictures, and the sections are color-coded. So if you are looking for a specific section, you can just start thumbing through, and the little barcode will tell you, oh, I'm in the side control section. That's not the section I want. I'll just go to the next color-coded section. And Mr. Gracie is presented here in a white gi. His opponent, training partner, is presented in a blue gi, which helps to tell who's doing what. You know, sometimes grappling can be confusing when photographed if you're not quite sure what you're looking at. So the fact that he and his, you know, the guy being photographed with him are wearing two different colors of gi will sort of help one figure out what's going on. Now, pros and cons. The pros are, these two books are very easy to navigate. As I mentioned, the sections are color-coded. It's very progressive. You know, you can read it. You know, you'll get more advanced techniques farther along in the book than you would in the same section toward the beginning of it. As I said, the fact that the pictures are in color helps out an awful lot in order to tell what's going on. The text is very detailed, and there's not a whole lot that you have to figure out on your own. It also will show errors, like, hey, if you're going for this particular technique, watch out for this common error. Avoid doing this. Do this, not that. And finally, I do like how it incorporates sort of no-holds-barred and self-defense aspects into it. There are things like defending against strikes or using your own strikes in order to set up guard passes and stuff like that. That's something that's not shown a lot in places. As far as the cons go, if you are getting into competitive Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, I think a lot of these basics still hold up, but the meta of the grappling game isn't what it used to be. So fundamentals win fights, but as you move into the higher levels, there would be things that are not shown here that you would probably encounter in modern competitions. Outside of that, the The NHB stuff is sort of outdated for modern mixed martial arts. Some of it's okay, but we're not headbutting people from inside their guard anymore. There is a relationship between self-defense and fighting, but fighting is not the same thing as self-defense. So when you would use some of these fighting techniques for self-defense is very dependent upon circumstances. Under what circumstance do I want to close in with someone and, stick to them and make the fight go longer, as opposed to finding a route to escape, which would be my go-to self-defense recommendation. So there may be circumstances for that, but I don't think it would be as applicable as, stun and run style, defenses. So, recommendations. This is very good on a technical level for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And I think if you are studying classic Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, this is a good book to have. If you have a background in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but you are not used to, the striking element of things, and then this might also be a good reference, for how you can use some very basic strikes to close the distance, how to defend yourself from strikes on the ground, some clinch drills to help you sort of get used to that type of environment. I'm generally a really big fan of the material in these books, because it's like, okay, if you're going to do an armbar, here's exactly how you do it in a way that is like mechanically optimized. I think it does a really good job of stuff like that. If you have any interest in the ground game at all, these would be a good set of books to have in order to get some really detailed information on some of the most mechanically efficient ways of applying ground techniques. So that's my take on these. Generally very good. Some elements that might be a little out of place depending on what you're looking for, but like I said, technically very good. And that's all I have for this week. And that was actually a pretty quick review for two different books. But yeah, I think that they are best as a pair. So if you're gonna get one, get them both. And anyway, I'll see you guys next week. Thanks for watching.